पत्राणि विदुनोति सुहृत्सदम् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भावत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. All right. So, dear devotees, we can get started with our verse for today, which is from the first canto, third chapter, and verses from 11 to 13. So that is what we'll be seeing today. So till now, what has happened here so far is that we have the roles of three Purusha avatars, right? That is what we saw. Karnodaksha Vishnu, he is the first Purusha who is responsible for the creation of these universes. From his bodily pores, the universes emanate. And then we have Garbhodaksha Vishnu. He's so he is in the Garbhodaka ocean, and he is the super soul for each of the universes. And from his navel, actually, Brahma takes birth. And then all the universal planetary systems are imagined to be situated in the body of Garbhodaksha Vishnu, whose form is eternally spiritual. And then the devotees with their perfect eyes see the transcendental form of the Purusha having thousands of eyes, legs, thighs, heads, and ears, etc. And which form of Vishnu is this referring to? It is actually referring to Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And then the source and seed of all forms. This form of Garbhodaksha Vishnu being the source of Kshirodaksha Vishnu, he is seen. Who is seen in our hearts? He is Kshirodaksha Vishnu. Garbhodaksha Vishnu expands himself as Kshirodaksha Vishnu. And then he is responsible for, he is the super soul of all living entities, and he is present in everybody's heart. And this is what we saw as in the role of three Purusha avatars. Purusha avatars are Karanodaksha Vishnu, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and Kshirodaksha Vishnu. Karanodaksha Vishnu, he is the super soul of the totality of the universes. And Garbhodaksha Vishnu, he is the super soul of each and every universe. And Kshirodaksha Vishnu, he is the super soul of our individual heart, our hearts. He is the super soul. He is acting as the super soul in every living entity. And this is what we saw in terms of roles of the Purusha avatars. And then after explaining about the Purusha avatars, Sutta Goswami, he explains the Lord's entry into the universe as Leela avatars, right? Leela avatars, that is what is the answer to question number 5. Who are the incarnations of the Lord? Leela avatars. So that is what you've been seeing. So in the last sessions, you would have seen about Kumaras. Who are Kumaras? Being situated in the vow of celibacy, they underwent severe austerities for the realization of the absolute truth, which is the Kumaras, incarnation of the Kumaras. And then we saw the Boar avatar, right? He lifted the earth from the regions of the universe. He lifted the earth and brought it back. And then we saw about Devrishi Narada. He's the one who's responsible for collecting the exposition of the Vedas that deal with devotional service and inspire non-fruitive action. And then you would have seen about Nara Narayana, who took severe exemplary penances to control their senses. And then we saw about, today we will see about Dattatreya, Yajna, and Rishabha. Then you'd have seen about Kapila also. He gave the exposition of the creative elements and metaphysics to Asuri Brahmana. So these are some of the incarnations you would have seen. So Kumaras, Boar incarnation, Devrishi Narada, and then Nara and Narayana. They will be further explained in the 11th and the 12th canto. And Kapila Dev, about Kapila Dev, you will be seeing again in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is what you have seen so far. As I always told you, Sutta Goswami, he answered question number 4 by talking about Purusha avatars, and who the Purusha avatars is something that I explained. And then question number 5 is going to talk about, okay, can you please explain me about the Leela avatars? And now Lord's entry into the universe as Leela avatars. So we would like to know about that. When the sages asked Sutta Goswami, he started to enumerate and give us the details about who are these Leela avatars. And that is what we are seeing as you would have seen in earlier weeks and this week's also about incarnations of Lord. So are you clear so far? Because this context is very important for us to understand when we actually start reading Srimad Bhagavatam. What is the connection? What am I trying to understand here? And what is the relevance of what happened previously versus what is happening now? Even though it is a verse by verse, we always need to have this holistic understanding what is the essence, what are we discussing? This question should always keep rising in our minds, and we should be able to understand this broader perspective also, along with the nitty-gritties and details and the essence of that particular verse. We must also look at it from a broader perspective. So hope you are all clear. And this is the answer to question number 5 and question number 4. We got the answer in the form of Purusha avatars. And now we are going to discuss question number 5, which is the answer to Leela avatars. You've been discussing about the Leela avatars in the past few classes. And today we'll be talking about the 3 incarnations of the Lord. The first one being Dattatreya, second one being Yajna, the son of Prajapati Ruchi and Akuti, and third one is son of Rishabhadev. Again, don't worry about all these. We will be learning about them in detail in the further cantos to come. Okay. So Dattatreya again will be seen in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Rishabhadev is going to be seen in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Manu's and the son of Yajna, these also will come up later. Okay. So we don't have to worry about what we are discussing, because in depth we'll be discussing about them in various other cantos. Okay, so with this we will get started with our today's verse and then move forward. All right, so thank you, dear devotees. First of all, I want to pay my humble obeisances to all of you all, so that I'm able to speak relevant words of Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. So now the Lord incarnated himself as Dattatreya. He is the son of Atri Muni and Anasuya. The history of the birth of Dattatreya as an incarnation of the Lord is written or mentioned in Brahmanda Purana in connection with the story of his devoted wife, who is Anasuya. It is said that Anasuya, the wife of Rishi Atri, prayed before the Lords Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva as follows: My lords, if you're pleased with me and if you desire me to ask you for some sort of blessings, then I pray you combine together to become my son. This was accepted by the Lords, and Dattatreya, the Lord, expounded the philosophy of the spirit soul and instructed to these people, as noted in the purport. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Now coming back to Dattatreya, right? So here it is being quoted by Srila Prabhupada about Brahmanda Purana. What is this Brahmanda Purana now, and what is being talked about in the Brahmanda Purana? We need to understand that, right? Definitely there is a story behind this. It's a very, very interesting story. Let's get into the story to understand that further. So Srila Prabhupada mentions in the commentary on this verse about Dattatreya. He says, Anasuya turned to Brahma, Lord Vishnu and Shiva, and she says this prayer: Oh Lords, if you're satisfied with me, wish to grant me some blessing, then you fulfill this request of mine. That means you become my son. This is what is my request to you, which is what is the commentary of Srila Prabhupada's purport talks about. Now, Brahmanda Purana, right? Prabhupada mentions Brahmanda Purana here, and there is the story is that Narada Muni, we all know about him. He began to glorify Anasuya. It's quoted from Brahmanda Purana. What is the story is what we are going to discuss now. So Narada Muni began to glorify Anasuya, and he said that there is no chaste woman anywhere. Okay, she's the chaste woman. First he came to Brahmaloka, and there he said this. And Saraswati Devi, wife of Brahma, she was offended. And then he went to Kailash and said, you know, of all women, the most chaste is Anasuya. Parvati, she also got jealous. In the end, she went to Vishnu and she began to glorify Anasuya, saying she is the most chaste wife. Chaste woman. In short, these three women, Parvati, Lakshmi, and Saraswati, united and said to their husbands, go to Anasuya and prove her that she is not chaste to the whole world. One way or the other, make her pativrata, break her pativrata, make her break the chastity and fidelity to one's own husband, that is Atri Muni. They seized at the right women and came in the form of Brahmins. They were three, right? And Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva. They came in the form of Brahmanas and they knocked the door of who? Anasuya. And then they knocked the door. Anasuya opened the door. They said, we are Brahmins. We know that you're also a wife of a Brahmin. So we have come to eat at your place. And then what did she do? As a courtesy, as any woman, any chaste woman would do, she just made them sit on the floor. She spread the leaves and she was ready to offer the food that was prepared by her. At that time, they made a remark. No, we have one condition. You must feed us naked. This is our condition. So for a woman, for a minute, she was like, oh my God, like that. On the other hand, she knew, because she's well read. She knew that she has to treat them very nicely and she has to fulfill all their desires. On the other hand, she was thinking, how can I do this, right? And then an idea came to her very quickly. She approached her husband's kamandalu. That is, the kamandalu had water in it. She took a little bit of water and then she sprayed this water on the three Brahmins who were in the guise. Obviously they were gods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. They were in the guise of Brahmanas. And what she did with this water was that when she sprinkled, she wanted them to turn into babies. So now everybody, all the three, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, they turned into babies now. So she undressed and began to feed them. She put them in a cradle and then she was feeding loo, 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 and then doing all these cuddling and things of that nature and feeding these babies, three babies. And those three wives, they were waiting for their husbands to return with yes, like that. They waited and waited and they feel okay. They were kind of waiting and waiting. In the meantime, they were kind of joyful. Okay, somehow we are going to get our desire fulfilled. In the end, what happened was, obviously the three women were waiting at the door and they were asking, when the men returned, they asked the men, okay, did you pass? Did you pass? What happened there? What happened? We are all curious to know what happened there. They were all horrified to learn that their husbands turned into babies and she happened to feed them undressed while fulfilling the condition and completely satisfying their desire. So this is what happened. Okay. And then again, coming back to the story, they were narrating that again, after doing this, what she did was she sprinkled the water from Kamandalu again, and then we became normal. And then we were so pleased with her. And then we asked her, what do you want from us? And then she said, I don't want anything. I just want all of you to become my son. This is what is the Brahmanda Puran story that is connected with Dattatreya, how Dattatreya's appearance was, how Anasuya and Atri Muni gave birth to Dattatreya, appearance of Dattatreya. So this is what happened. So Anasuya means he who has no envy. And Atri means three gunas, right? Atri means one who is beyond the three gunas. So Atri Muni, that is Anasuya and Atri Muni, one who has no envy, and Atri means one who is beyond three gunas. So Brahmanda Purana very nicely explains about how Anasuya fulfilled the desires of the Brahmanas, at the same time kept her chastity clean. Right? Very, very inspiring story of Atri Muni and Anasuya and how they actually gave birth to the appearance of Dattatreya from Brahmanda Purana. So this is with regards to verse number 11. Okay, that is Dattatreya. He is the sixth incarnation. And now we're going to talk about Yajna. He is the son of Prajapati Ruchi and Akuti. Okay. So now he's the seventh incarnation Yajna, the son of Prajapati Ruchi and his wife Akuti. He controlled the period during the change of the Swayambhu Manu, and he was assisted by demigods such as his son Yama. So we are going to discuss directly from the purport. I'm hearing some noise. I don't know. Maybe Mataji, somebody is on mute. Unmute. Maybe you can mute them. Okay. So let's get into the seventh incarnation. See, the administrative post occupied by the demigods for maintaining the regulations of the material world are offered to the highly elevated pious beings, right? If you have to take up an administrative post, then you have to really be elevated in your pious credits. You should really be able to have lot of pious credits. When there is scarcity of such pious living beings, what happens? Okay, we don't have a qualified individual. Then what happens in that case? Lord himself incarnates as Brahma or Prajapati or Indra, and he takes up the charge. This is what happens. So Lord himself, when there is no person who can actually fulfill the criteria to take up this administrative post, then what happens during that period? Lord himself takes up that post. Okay, during the period of Swayambhu Manu, there was no living being who could occupy the post of Indra, the king of Indraloka. Okay, so at that time, what happened was Lord himself became Indra. He was assisted by his sons like Yama and other demigods, and then he took care of the universal affairs. And what is the function of Indra? Indra is responsible for managing the heavenly planets. He is the administrative demigod. He is responsible for taking care of this heavenly planet. And since there was no qualified individual during this period of Vaivashvata Manu, what happened was Lord himself took up that post of Lord Indra. So he was started to serve with the assistance of his sons like Yama and other demigods, and then took care of this universal affairs. Okay, so this is what is the understanding from verse number 12. So verse number 12 and seventh incarnation, Yajna, son of Prajapati Ruchi and Akuti. Okay, now we are going to go into the 13th sloka. 13th sloka has a lot to offer. So we will get our minds totally focused on verse number 13 and understand what that verse is about and what is that incarnation of the Lord whom we are talking about. Okay, let's get into the 13th verse now. So 13th verse talks about King Rishabha. He's the son of Nabi, and he got married. Nabi married to Meru Devi, and he was desiring to have a very, very glorious son so that he could leave his dynasty behind to him. And so that way he can give it to him and he could involve himself in performing austerities, yajnas, charity, like that. So in one of those yajnas, he's always he's a very pious person, very beautiful devotee of the Lord. And when during one of the yajnas he performed, the Supreme Lord actually appeared, and he was extremely pleased, and he expressed his pleasure and of Nabi's sacrifice that he had performed. And he expressed that at that time, Nabi expressed his desire that he wants a son like Lord, the Supreme Lord. So when he was performing his austerities, the Lord was so pleased. He appeared to King Nabi and the priest. And then during that time, Nabi actually expressed his desire to have a son like the Supreme Lord. And the Supreme Lord, being very pleased, announced that I shall appear in the womb of Meru Devi personally, and very soon the Supreme Lord, he appeared as Nabi, was very, very beautiful, decorated, wonderful, not just in physical features, but also in his wonderful qualities, right? So he was given the name Nabi by Rishabhadev, and means the supreme. He's the supreme. He's the best, like that. Nabi means he's the supreme, and he's the best, like that. So Rishabhadev, this name was given to Rishabhadev. Actually named him, and then this name signifies that he's the supreme and he's the best. And Nabi was, of course, very pleased Rishabdev was very pleased about Nabi's appearance also. I mean, in the sense, he knew that the Supreme Lord gave him the benediction to have a son like him, like that. So he was very, very happy about that fact. And Indra had stopped showering rains because of envy of Rishabhadev. And without caring for Indra, Rishabhadev, by his own potency, he caused profuse rain showers as needed for the whole land of Ajnaba. Ajnaba, see, after Bharat Maharaj was born, that is again, he was Rishabhadev's son was Bharat Maharaj. And after Bharat Maharaj was born, it became Bharatvarsha. The land became Bharatvarsha, and before that, it is Ajnaba. So immediately Indra could understand, oh my God, he is so powerful. Actually, he offered, he was so taken away by the potency of Rishabhadev, right? He was very much so carried away. Okay, Rishabhadev is capable of getting himself so much profuse rains for this Ajnaba region. So he must be really potent. Like that, he understood, Indra understood Rishabhadev's power. I'm sorry, actually, I mentioned that Nabi is the father of Rishabhadev. Okay, and Rishabhadev means supreme, the best. I'm sorry, I told Nabi means, I'm sorry, Rishabha means supreme, the best. Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that. As I was just telling, I'm just recollecting, I made a blunder there. So Nabi is the father of Rishabhadev, and Lord himself appeared in the form of Rishabhadev to Nabi, because he was so pleased when Nabi was performing the yajna. He was so pleased, and he asked him a benediction. What do you want from me? At that time, Nabi was given the benediction by the Supreme Lord. When he asked, he said, I want a son like you. And Lord said, okay, no problem. I'll come in the womb of Meru Devi. And Nabi soon got a son. And he had good physical features. As I told you, he had all these beautiful features. And then Nabi gave him the name Rishabha, which means the supreme or the best. That's what it means. And I just made a blunder there to say Nabi's name meant that, which is not the case. And then we saw about the incident where Indra did not give rains, and Rishabhadev, without caring for Indra, Rishabhadev, by his own potency, he was able to bring a profuse shower as needed for the region of Ajnaba. And this is called Bharatvarsha later, when Bharat Maharaj was born. So immediately what Indra could understand was, this guy is very potent, and he offered a beautiful daily to Rishabhadev. Her name was Jayanti. And Rishabhadev then married Jayanti. As soon as Maharaj Nabi, he realized that Rishabhadev has come to an age where he can handle responsibilities, where he can handle kingdom. Then he retired along with his wife to Badrika Ashrama. So, and there they were serving Naranarayana. So now, very important point to note is that, so these kings, they are not at all attached to these properties, these kingdoms, this administrative duties. Immediately, whenever time came, they had to move on to their next stage of life. They were immediately able to renounce. That is because they don't have attachment to material objects or material things this world has to offer. With Nabi, he has so much power also. With the, with the position comes power. So much he has power. So who will want to leave power in this material world? If somebody were to ask you to step down from your position and become a servant, nobody wants to be in that attitude or mood of a servant, right? When you have so much powers, when you have somebody opening the car door, when you have somebody opening the door for you, when you have somebody massaging the feet for you, when you have so much luxury, you really don't want to leave that. Imagine ourselves in that position. If we were, that is why they were called Raja Rishis, right? They were Rajas, but Rishis when they act. They were able to detach themselves. And they will, because how can detachment happen? Detachment happens when you have a higher goal. And these lower goals, these lower things, then that time they don't make any headway. They really don't make any sense. When you have higher goal, all these things, they don't seem to make a big of a deal. So the important point that we need to understand here is that Nabi, when the time came, Maharaj Nabi realized, okay, Rishabhadev, he has attained a certain age where he is capable of handling the responsibilities to the kingdom. He went with his wife to Badrika Ashrama and he started to serve Naranarayana Rishi there, and he attained the ultimate perfection of life by serving in that way. So now, even though Rishabhadev was at home, he demonstrated the duty as father, as son, and everything. So Rishabhadev, he truly followed the footsteps of his father. It's very important. He was having a very ideal householder life. He had 100 sons through Jayanti, and the eldest was Bharat Maharaj. So the whole planet, we all know that it became Bharat Varsha and was named after him, right? So, and then he had 9 other sons. They were all powerful Kshatriyas, to whom Maharaj Rishabha later handed over 9 regions that were divided into 9 parts, and he distributed this whole kingdom to these 9 sons. The next 9 sons, they were Nava Yogendras. They were all extremely exalted Bhagavatas. They traveled all over the directions to preach the glories of pure devotional service. We will hear about the Nava Yogendras in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, and then there was this conversation between Narada and Vasudev, and the next 81 sons became very well-mannered Brahmanas. They were all pure-hearted Brahmanas. So Srila Prabhupada, if you understand, he mentions in the purport, in the Gita, right? What does he mention? Guna and karma, right? Guna, and the person is born, he gets a certain characteristics based on his guna and karma. Guna karma vibhagasaha. So how guna and karma is what determines your adhikar and not your birth. So here Rishabhadev, he was a powerful Kshatriya. Of course, he is transcendental, he is Lord himself, but he has 100 sons who are all of different natures. So we saw first was Bharat Maharaj. What did he do? We got the whole planet, and this whole planet was named as Bharat Varsha. And then 9 other sons were all powerful Kshatriyas. 9 parts he divided and gave them some portion of the kingdom. And then we have 9 Navayogendras. They were all very exalted Bhagavatas. And what did they do? They started to glorify and preach the holy names of the Lord and pure devotional service. And then we see there were 81 sons who are also pure-hearted Brahmanas, right? So this is the important understanding here, is that one's adhikar actually depends upon guna and karma and not by birth. So Rishabhadev, he had sons who are, even though he was a Kshatriya, he had sons who are Brahmanical by nature also, right? So this is the understanding that Srila Prabhupada brings us in contrast to help us understand what the Gita verse is and what we see in terms of practicalities as well. So we need to understand that. Now we need to understand about the 4 stages of sannyas ashram, because this is very important. Why it's important is because, see, one time along with the sons, he was going on a tour, and there was an assembly of brahmanas who were sitting there. All his children sat down and brahmanas were instructing, and he was also there. He instructed the whole world what was to come. So at each stage of life, they were given an opportunity to perform a certain function or certain role. Like King Nabi, he was instructing, he was a grahastha, he was then playing the role of a Kshatriya, being a Kshatriya ruler also. After some time, when he was asked to give up, or when the time came for him to renounce the kingdom, he did renounce the kingdom and move to the next stage of life. So the orders that each one takes up during the stage of their life is very important, and they had to follow through this varna and ashrama division in order to attain the level of perfection. So this is what they were following through, and we see that the last stage is sannyasa ashrama, right? And what is the sannyasa ashrama constitute, and what were the different stages of sannyasa ashrama is something it is being discussed in the purport. So we will try to understand what they mean, maybe in a little bit. I'm sorry, Hare Krishna. So briefly, we will try to understand what they mean. The 4 stages. First one is Kutichaka. So Kutichaka means you stay in the same village and establish a small kuti, which is outside of the village. Because you are used to a particular kind of food that is cooked by your wife, and suddenly you can't go and start begging, right? You need a transition to happen slowly. You may get some stomach problem or something if you immediately start going to different people's house and begging. So this is the first stage where this person who's taken up the sannyas ashrama, he goes outside of the village and takes a small kuti, sets up this kuti, and he's being given a dabba, so as to speak, once a day. He's being fed, okay, once a day. This is Kutichaka. Next comes Bahudaka. Bahudaka means gradually you're not dependent from home. There's no more dabba coming to you. Okay, you go to nearby villages, not to burden anyone, but just for madhukari to few houses, little from each of the houses. That is what is Bahudaka. See, the thing is, you are able to slowly see how you are becoming detached further and further and further. In Kutichaka, you used to get a dabba, and now you're not getting a dabba or any kind of food from anyone, but you are going yourself to few places, in the nearby village. You're just going to get a madhukari from a few houses. Okay, this is Bahudaka. And then Parivarkacharya is you leave that place and you start wandering. This is what a Parivarkacharya will do. And then Paramahamsa, he's completely beyond all the varnas and ashramas. So these are the stages that Prabhupada talks about in the purport to help us understand the different stages of sannyas and to help us understand how this person is actually becoming very much detached as he progresses through Kutichaka, Bahudaka, Parivarkacharya and Paramahamsa stage. At the stage of Paramahamsa, he is completely beyond the varnas and ashramas. Okay, and now there's also we also know about Avadut, right? Later we will come to know about Jata Bharat, who was completely aloof from his gross and subtle body. So the whole idea basically is self-realization, right? I think we will try to understand. See, Prabhupada helps us understand what is the self-realization. Self-realization means becoming serious about the needs of the self. That is the true self, the soul, becoming indifferent to the need of the gross and the subtle body, right? Sense gratification is just the opposite. It becomes, that means we are, because when we have sense gratification, it's just the opposite. Opposite means we become serious about the needs of the gross and the subtle body and being indifferent to the needs of the soul. So it's very important for us to understand what is the self-realization and what is sense gratification, because both are opposite. When we start to become, when we start serious, when we want to become serious and start understanding about who we are and understand the true self, the need, what is the soul, when we try to understand these things and attain perfection there, then we understand, okay, that is self-realization. That time you actually become indifferent to what? The needs of gross and subtle body. But sense gratification means it's just the opposite. You are serious about the needs of your gross and subtle body, and you are indifferent to the needs of the soul. You don't care about the soul. You don't care about the real self. That is sense gratification. Again, we need to understand from time immemorial, prematurely, we have been accumulating so many material impressions. And when we talk about Avadut or personalities like Rishabhadev, who was indifferent to his gross and subtle body, we need to understand that we cannot try to imitate them, or we cannot even try to understand from our level, because where are we looking? With what set of eyes are we looking at? We are looking with our material eyes, and with material eyes we will not be able to understand such level of we cannot understand what is an Avadut, because Avadut is not in the norms or regulations that we would see in the spiritual realm. He is beyond all of that. So when we are discussing about personalities like Jata Bharat or people of that who belong to that category of Avadut, we will not be able to understand them. At the same time, we should not offend them. We cannot, we also see how he is behaving or something like, we cannot comment of people who are in the scriptures. This is offense to the scriptures. And what will happen with this process is that we are committing Vaishnava Aparadh, and we will definitely fall down, because Vaishnava Aparadh is the only way, or it is the, when we are destined to fall down, that is the only way we will fall down. Till that time, we will not fall down. Only when we commit aparadh, That is the only time we will fall down. So we need to be really careful when we come across some personalities in Bhagavatam. Why are they described and what? See, we just need to understand the level of devotion and absorption to the Supreme Lord, because of which they are doing such an action. Okay, so more to come in the later cantos, but I'm just giving a warning here to say that because of our conditional nature, we will not be able to understand certain great personalities, and we cannot also imitate to follow in their steps. So that is very important. And Srila Prabhupada actually talks about a very important teaching of Rishabhadev. What he teaches in the 5th canto, 1st verse, 5th canto, 5th chapter, 1st verse. He says, Lord Rishabhadev, he told his sons, my dear boys, of all living entities who have accepted the material bodies in this world, one who has been awarded the human form should not work hard day and night simply for sense gratification, which is available even for dogs and hogs that eat stool. One should engage in penance and austerity to attain the divine position of devotional service. By such activity, one's heart is purified, and when one attains the position, he attains the eternal blissful life, which is transcendental to material happiness and which continues forever. So this was the profound teaching of Rishabhadev to his sons, which Srila Prabhupada quotes. And again, we need to understand, I'm just going to talk about a few points that can be taken as lessons learned for our understanding as to what Rishabhadev has told his sons. What is he saying here? Spending quality time of this energy that we've been offered in this material world for those things which are available even to the hogs, lower species of life. What is the benefit of this benedictions that is given to this human form of life? Even they can enjoy what we are enjoying, right? Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, even they can do. So what are we supposed to do? It's being clarified that we have to do tapodivyam. So whether we like it or not, just existing in this world, that itself is tapasya. If you look at lockdown is tapasya. It actually, when it opens, okay, when the lockdown clears, when it opens up, it is another type of tapasya we need to learn. So there is no substitute for tapasya. Existing in this material world itself is tapasya. Tapasya, Srila Prabhupada gives a very beautiful definition. He says it's voluntary acceptance of inconvenience. Voluntary acceptance of inconvenience that is given to us. Such an amazing definition. So when wonderful things come, tapasya is as much as necessary, we just take. Okay, you have to think that my pious credits are getting exhausted by actually taking this. I'm very much satisfied with what is necessary. So now doing some little austerities like fasting, doing some devotional activities, the papa or bad reactions or sinful reactions are going away, right? It's amazing if you compare it in contrast to the demons. Tapasya, how much they perform tapasya, right? If you look at their determination, no devotees can also have such kind of determination when they perform tapasya with such vengeful attitude. They just give up eating, sleeping, mating, everything they give up for millions of years, right? So Srila Prabhupada gives an example of bedbug. During winter, it becomes thin, only bones are seen. It doesn't have bone, but something like that. So Hiranyakashipu, if you look at him, he became bones and skin, right? So now this bedbug, when the summer season comes, it becomes fat. So Hiranyakashipu's tremendous tapasya, he had only bones, but still envy against the Lord did not go. Practically, he got a new body. That much tapasya he did. So the body may change, but the subtle body is not going to change. The subtle body's desires, they are not going to change. He still had that envy towards the Lord. His body, physical body, it was thin with bones. It got replaced, it got replenished. He got kind of a new body. But then his subtle bodies, his desires did not go away. The envy was still deep-rooted in his heart. The ego was puffed up more. Look how austere I am. Right? Look how powerful I am. Look how I'm able to get benedictions. So therefore, Narada Muni, he says, if you're voluntarily accepting inconvenience simply to worship the Lord, to satisfy him, that is samsiddhi haritoshanam. Otherwise, that is not at all tapasya. This is the definition: voluntarily accepting inconvenience to worship the Lord, to satisfy him and his pleasures. That is tapasya. Not in a stubborn way. No. That is austerity in the mode of ignorance. We saw in Bhagavad Gita also austerity in the mode of ignorance, passion, and goodness. Right? So, what is austerity? It is to accept inconvenience simply to worship the Lord and give him pleasure. Voluntary acceptance of inconvenience, just for that. Right? That is real tapasya. So, we need to understand, through this process of austerity, is my consciousness getting purified or is it getting petrified? We need to ask ourselves this question. So therefore, it is very important that Srila Prabhupada stresses the importance of austerity to attain the divine position of devotional service. What happens by this process is that one gets a blissful life. They become transcendental to the material happiness. They are able to transcend the dualities. When we are able to do, what happens through this process is our heart gets purified. This is what happens. The cleansing of the heart happens. And now for a devotee, what happens is that this material impressions, when we start to perform this devotional activities, what happens is material impressions go to the side and they get more of devotional impressions, spiritual impressions. So we need to keep on accumulating spiritual impressions so that when our body, mind, and ego gets purified, we will be able to serve the lordships when we accumulate that spiritual impressions. And between, when we are having this cleansing of the heart that happens, we will make sure that all the bad things also wipe away in the process. All the anarthas, they all have to go away. The only effective way for us to be cleansed of all these material impressions or the material desires, so as to speak, is to do this activity of devotional tapodivyam. Rishabhdev gives us this instruction that we need to perform activities that are pleasing to the lordships, tapodivyam, transcendental. That way you will become, go over the modes. You will definitely surpass the modes. You'll be able to overcome these dualities, and you'll be able to transcend this material happiness also. This is definitely possible by this act of devotional service to the Lords, to please the lordships. When we accept some voluntary inconvenience to them, when we do the acts of devotional service which are going to please the Lords, through this process, it is going to help us come above the modes, transcend the dualities. All this is definitely possible. It is proven. Our acharyas have proven it. It is scientifically, it is proven. So many examples are there in our scriptures, to help us understand and get that faith that it is possible to transcend this material happiness. Otherwise, why would we have so many people sticking to this movement for such a long period of time? This process is working. This process, the only thing is that our faith is right now very weak. Okay, we all have pure devotional faith. Everybody has it. It is just that our faith has to become stronger and stronger. The faith becomes stronger when we actually become proficient in the knowledge of Shastras. At that time, nobody can help. What happens otherwise is our faith, weak faith. With weak faith, anybody can say anything. We will succumb to that and we will fall down. If you don't have strong background of scriptural knowledge, what happens? If somebody comes and says something, then okay, oh, is it that way? Okay. I will also start practicing what you're practicing, and you will go into some wrong way of practice instead of the right way. But if you're strong with the Shastras and if you have the Shastric background, then you will say, no, that is not the way. This is the way. You will convince the other person about what is exactly need to be done in this particular situation. So for us to not fall down, at the same time, for us to get stronger faith, we need to have Shastric background. We need to have Shastriya Shraddha. It is like a mother. The mother is going to help you progress in devotional service. So this Shastriya Shraddha will help us progress in devotional service. The faith that we have on the scriptures. Why we do what we do. If we don't, do Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, then our chanting will become ritualistic. We are not creating that Sambandha Gyan, right? Sambandha Gyan is important. To establish a relationship with this chanting of these holy names, we need to have the Sambandha Gyan. And the Sambandha Gyan can be understood in a well-defined way by reading Shastras, by understanding, oh, here we have so many personalities. This is what is Krishna wants. This is what is the mind of Krishna. This is what he likes. This is what we should do. This is what we should not do. So we will get that kind of understanding, where our understanding will help us to guide the actions we perform. Currently, we are performing a particular action based on what I like and what I don't like. Okay, I like to do this activity. That is why I'm doing this activity. I'm not doing this activity because Krishna wants me to do that activity. Anukulyase sankalpa pratikulyase varchanam. This happens, this paradigm shift happens, where you shift your mindset from I like, I don't like to Krishna wants, Krishna likes, and Krishna doesn't like. Anukulya, what is favorable for Krishna consciousness, I do that. What is not favorable, I don't do that. How will you be able to do it unless you have Shastrical background? This knowledge is what will help us to act in an appropriate way. Okay, so with this, we can conclude today's session with Rishabhadev's incarnation. Thank you so much, dear devotees. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Mancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namah. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Are there any questions for Her Grace Radhika Kasturi Mataji before we end the session? Can be any question, comment. Can really be anything. If there are no questions or comments, then I believe we can end the session today. Thank you, Mataji, for this wonderful class. As I can see, nobody had any questions, which must mean that it was a very descriptive class. So everyone's doubts are not there. So thank you, Mataji, for this wonderful class. Thank you for taking some time out and joining this Zoom session to help us on our journey towards spirituality, which is back to Godhead. So thank you for being our mentor today. And on behalf of ISKCON Eldoret, we'd like to thank you. So I'd like to kindly request all the devotees assembled within this Zoom session to kindly unmute yourselves and let's chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra once for Her Grace Radhika Kasturi Mataji. Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare,
Srila Prabhupada ki, Grace Radhika Kasturi Mataji ki,
Glories to the assembly.
Go Premanande.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Thank you very much,
Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Sorry, my video was traveling. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, everyone. Prahlad, thank you so much. Thank you very much, Prahlad. Really helped me. I'll end the session
You're
now.
welcome, Mataji.
Yeah, Prahlad Prabhuji, you have a function tomorrow at the temple?
Actually, it was changed to the day